Hey, Godfather of Anxiety here. Just wanted to make a really short video about the importance of surrounding yourself with positive people during your recovery from anxiety disorder. I think this is an important video to do because, I've done other videos where we've talked about different roadblocks to recovery and mentioned this as a side point, but it can be so pivotal who we choose to spend time around during our recovery, because some people can be a tremendous aid and benefit, and some people can be just the opposite. And I'm not doing a category of bad people and good people. There will be definitely some of that in this short video, but mostly it's going to be about what type of people should you be around when your symptoms are still going, when they're still affecting your life. And, it's just really important because some people, depending on, their personality type and the effect they have with us, it can really either be a roadblock or a benefit. So without going on too long about it, the most important thing, first, I'm going to go through the type of people you want to have around you during your recovery and if you have been hit with an anxiety disorder. Number one, you want people who love you, genuinely love you. This is important because if they really love you, they're not looking to get something from you, and they love you for who you are. So this is going to be important. Anytime we go through anything in life, right? It could be, like I have experience with being heavy, being very overweight. When you're really overweight, you kind of see who your friends are and who really cares about you, who really loves you more than just in a superficial way. And it's just as important when you have an anxiety disorder, because you're going to be compromised. You're not going to be yourself. Your moods aren't going to be the same. Your outlook isn't going to be the same. A lot of the time you're going to be clinically depressed as well. So it's going to take somebody who really genuinely cares about you and loves you to be a benefit to you, to be a rock, to help you remember who you are. That's what's important, because that's what'll get lost. You'll lose your identity. And the people who really love you, they're not going to forget who you really are. And just because you've been hit with a condition, an anxiety condition or a mental health issue, they're not going to turn their back on you. That's not, at least my definition of love. Love is unconditional. It is something that is a bond that has been cemented through years of actions, positive actions in a relationship. The next thing you want genuine people around you. So you don't want somebody who's superficial. You don't want somebody who's, let me just stick to the positives here. So you want somebody who's going to tell you like it is. And it goes along with another quality I have here, and that's honesty. You want somebody who's genuine and honest, because they're not going to, just agree with some of the magical thinking and the craziness. And they're going to be real with you when you ask them those questions that you're going to ask them, probably for either reassurance or just out of morbid fear. You're going to ask them questions. It's going to be really important that they're honest and that they're genuine. That way, when they give you advice or they respond to something that you've said, maybe that's, clearly being affected by your condition. It's like when you ask somebody for the fifth time, How do I look? Do I look sick? Do I look, you start asking crazy questions that are definitely associated with a condition. You need somebody who's going to be genuine and who's going to be honest with you and say, listen, I have no problem being honest with you and telling you, an answer to that question, but that's the fifth time you've asked. So I'm also going to be honest with you that your condition is obviously having an effect on your thinking. And that's really important, to have somebody like that who you can count on. I was very blessed to have both a parent who had actually gone through similar issues to me. And of course, from that generation, people who were born maybe as far back as in the 40s or 50s, they just don't even really acknowledge things like mental health. So, it was some of the information that I got further into my diagnosis from my mom would have been helpful earlier on, but she had never actually put a name to what she had gone through. And she definitely had panic attacks and generalized anxiety for years and years, which I pretty much had an idea of, but not so much the panic attacks. So, and also my wife, even though initially she had no idea and no experience with people who had anxiety disorders, her determination to help me and to be loyal no matter what, even if she didn't understand something, is, something I'll never be able to repay. And those are the type of people. That's why I mentioned people who love you, who are genuine, who are loyal and honest. Loyalty. So just very briefly, I was talking about how when I was very heavy, I noticed that certain people, unfortunately, would treat me a lot differently. Some you could clearly see, maybe even be embarrassed to be around me. Or you might catch somebody shaking their head or smiling as you turn away. And it's, fair weather friends are not friends. So if somebody is going to not want to spend time with you or turn their back on you because you have a mental health issue or an anxiety condition, that was a net gain for you. In other words, not having them as a friend is actually going to be a good thing for your life and for your mental health. And, there's just no room in anyone's life to have people who are only there because of, either your perceived status, your perceived, appearance, whatever shallow, non-important thing that has made, that's made this person gravitate to want to be around you. That's not a reason for friendship. It's certainly not a reason for a romantic relationship. And you definitely don't want people like that around you. This is a big one. And that's someone who's reasonable. Again, it kind of goes back into what I was talking about before about being honest, but you got to have somebody who's going to be able to sort through when you're clearly asking questions that are related to magical thinking, related to your condition, and they're going to be able to give you a very, reasonable answer that you're going to be able to count on when your brain, because guys, if you've been to where I've been, there's times when you can't trust your own thoughts. You lose all self-esteem. You start to question whether or not you're a good person. You you start questioning everything especially about yourself. But if you have somebody who's reasonable, you can kind of think of them as a rudder on a boat to help steer you in the right direction. And, it's somebody who maybe when you're having a panic attack, they say, no, listen, and I'll give the example with my wife again. She said, Carl, are you in pain? And that was enough to make me realize, when I realized that I wasn't experiencing actual physical pain, that what was happening to me was not that I was dying, but that it was a panic attack. And that's because, she's been my voice of reason, even inside my head, when my own voice of reason has waved bye-bye to me because of the condition, because of anxiety disorder. And then the last quality I think you should look for in somebody you want to spend time with if you're, compromised by anxiety disorder, and that's someone who's empathetic. Somebody who, instead of being, judgmental but they try to put themselves in your place. And if you do that in any situation, the worst case scenario is you're going to gain insight as to why the person may be acting the way they're acting, right? So, and also it's an extension of love. If you really want to figure out, say somebody who for years and years they were one way and then all of a sudden they're just not acting like themselves, you're not just going to be like quick to say, oh, I'm done with them. But if you're empathetic, you'll be able to try to put yourself in their place, to understand what they're going through. And those, again, that's the type of people that you want around you when the chips are down, when you are going through one of these anxiety spectrum disorders where I'm telling you guys, it's, and I don't have to tell most of you because probably most of you have experienced these, but there's nothing fun about it. And it can make you question everything, and you can feel defeated. You can feel insane. I mean, I could go on and on with the adjectives as far as how you might feel when you have these disorders, especially if you're clinically depressed as well, which often happens. They often occur simultaneously. So it's important who you surround yourself with. Those are the people that you should spend time with. Now, just real quickly, and a lot of this is just going to be, the antithesis, the opposite of what I mentioned. You don't want people who are, haters, or who are looking for drama, or who enjoy watching a demise. Now, you probably don't have too many people like this in your life because they're really just not pleasant people to be around. Maybe just to get a little bit of gossip for like 5 minutes, you probably don't mind being around them, but it doesn't take you very long to realize that when you're not there, they're talking like that about you. And so they're, they're fault finding. They're always looking for drama, and they almost are rooting for someone to fall. It's almost like a way to make themselves feel better about themselves. It's the people who put people down to elevate themselves. And clearly, if you're experiencing anxiety disorder, you do not want someone like that around. It will, definitely pull you in the wrong direction and hinder your recovery. Another thing you don't want is you don't want people who are superficial. You want to know that how someone's treating you has some substance to it, and that, somebody who's not going to, because maybe your appearance is going to change a little because you're going to, let's face it, your hygiene might even take a hit. If you're severely clinically depressed and you have one of these anxiety disorders, you could gain weight, you could lose weight, there's all kinds of things. You might just not care as much about your appearance when you're worried if you're going to die every day, or you feel like you've already died emotionally. So being around someone who's superficial, who's just looking at the outside, that's not going to be a good thing. They're going to, they're probably not going to want to spend a lot of time around you anyways, because you're not going to look the part. And, that's just how those, people like that are. There's no depth. They have no emotional depth. And in general, especially when you're going through an anxiety disorder, you don't want to have people like that around. Um, you know, obviously people who are fake or disingenuous, again, there are people that will go, oh, I feel so bad for you. And then when they leave, they're telling everybody, oh, it's just in his head. And we all go through stress. Da, 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 da. You just don't want people like that around. If you know somebody is two-faced, or, you've watched them say one thing to someone's face and then wink, wink, say the exact opposite and ridicule that person, you definitely don't want to be around someone like that. You certainly, not when you're going through an anxiety disorder. And then this is one where, I talked about not always being about, good or bad. There are people that may just feed our anxiety. We don't want to be around people like that. It could be that they have anxiety disorder themselves. Now, you might be able, in this situation, you might be able to spend some time with them, but as soon as you start realizing that a conversation is basically just completely centered on the condition, and then all of a sudden a typical thing might be where you're starting to question whether or not it's anxiety, and you really think it might be something else, like say you guys both have health anxiety, and you can escalate and escalate until, by the end of the conversation, you're both worried. One person's worried they have a brain tumor, the other person's worried they have, ALS or something, and it's just a bad combination, right? So in that situation, maybe just limit the time you spend with someone else who is affected by one of the anxiety disorders. And it can also be somebody who just feeds your anxiety because maybe there's someone who, even if they're not bad, they take a lot of mental energy and emotional energy to be around. There's people that I love very deeply that I have to, if I'm really not doing well with my anxiety, I know that's probably not a good person to spend time with on that day or in that situation. Because, if somebody is, you have a finite amount of emotional energy when you have one of these anxiety disorders. And if somebody is, whether they're too up and they ask for too much during a conversation, like maybe they ask deep questions. And now listen, sometimes guys, depending on where your anxiety's at, if they help you engage your mind, this might be the perfect person for you to be around. But if instead they exhaust you, and again, this might not be a person who, with nefarious motives or anything. This might just be somebody who that's kind of the way they're wired. But that's probably somebody that if you're really, especially if you're in the throes of an anxiety disorder, or even if you're trying to recover, you might just want to at least limit the amount of time you spend with them. And then this is, I think, one of the worst type of person or people to spend time with. And that's the people who are skeptical, and every time they talk to you, they say, it's all in your head. People who doubt that what you're going through is real. That will not only hinder your recovery, but it'll make you feel, especially if you're clinically depressed too, it's going to make you feel like, they're probably right. I should just give up. That could make somebody maybe who has thoughts of harming themselves actually follow through with it. And because they feel like, well, why can't I just, there isn't something physical that I can see. Why can't I just get up and fix this? But you can't. Again, anxiety disorders have physiological symptoms. If it comes to something like panic disorder or generalized anxiety disorder, you're stuck in fight or flight. There are real physical symptoms when you are stuck in the fight or flight response. And you can read it off any medical website. You can do all the research you want. a neurotypical person cannot worry themselves into a panic attack. So there is something going on. Again, there's a specific spot in the brain that the amygdala, where something is going wrong. People with anxiety disorders, even people with autism, there's one located there's an amygdala on each side of the brain, and something to do with people with anxiety disorder or even autism, they have like extra large amygdalas. And so they believe that something is going on with the way that these electrical impulses are being interpreted that's triggering you to go into fight or flight. Now, again, there's nothing hard, proven beyond reasonable doubt here, but that is, one thing is for sure, the symptoms with anxiety disorder are real. They're not pretend, they're not imagined. And depression is the same way. And there are times when, selfishly, when you're really in a bad spot, when you almost wish someone could feel, someone who's saying something like, oh, it's all in your head, and, just we all have stress, just get by this, this shouldn't be holding you down, you're weak, You just wish that they could experience a panic attack. You wish that they could experience that feeling when you have generalized anxiety where no matter what, you can't relax. Even when you start to fall asleep, you wake up in a panic. And just that happened to you over and over again for hours and hours. And again, not because you want them to be tortured, but because you want them to see that this is not something that you've dreamt up. This is not your way of quitting on life, but that these are real. So that's about it, what I want to say in the video. I think it is really important who we surround ourselves with when we're trying to get better, if we have one of these anxiety conditions, because surrounding yourself with, people who are positive, who are genuine, who love you, who are honest and loyal and reasonable and empathetic, these people are going to really help you to get to the other side of recovery, because they're not going to make you feel like you're hopeless. They're not going to make you feel bad about yourself. And they're also not going to lie to you in a way to fluff you up or where you can't trust them. They're going to call out magical thinking. They're going to call out avoidance behaviors. And these things do need to be addressed honestly. So, it's not all just going to be rainbows and butterflies, but that honesty is going to be important. Also being reasonable. Yeah. So this, people like that are going to be a huge help, and people who are the opposite, they're going to be a huge hindrance and a roadblock. And I realize that some of us, there's going to be certain limitations if we're experiencing an anxiety disorder. There's going to be limitations as to who we spend time with. Some people, maybe they're part of our household and they fall into some of these categories. But just for the most part, if you have control over it, try to be around people who are positive and who will help you and will help you look at things honestly, as opposed to, just basically hating on you and making you feel like you're worthless. But that's about all I want to say. Thanks so much for the engagement. Thanks for, all the comments. Like, share, subscribe. If you know anybody who's going through any of these anxiety disorders, have them take a look at the videos. There's quite a few videos now that you can look at, and worst case scenario, maybe they realize that is what they have, and maybe it'll help them to go get the help they need from a mental health professional. Basically, I just don't want people to be stuck where I was stuck for 6 years, where I wasn't getting the help I needed, and my life is basically at a standstill, and I was trapped in a prison of anxiety and depression. So thanks so much, guys, and until my next video, take care.